Me and my dad had a conversation, and one of my promises to him was to not get pregnant. She noticed changes within my face, my nose, even my body, and I didn't. I fill out the paperwork, connect with the doctor, and the first question is, do you think you may be pregnant? I said, oh my goodness, no. No. One of the reasons why I did not think I was pregnant is because I had a full cycle each month. I told my mom first because I know it was going to disappoint my dad. She said, I already knew. She was like, are you keeping or are you considering? And I was like, I don't know. She said, well, I know you can't be a mother at 18. The professor, he's going through the syllabus, and I raised my hand and he said, yes, ma'am. You got a question? I said, I don't. I said, I think my water has broke. And he was like, hold it. Wait a minute. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get the ambulance. The hardest thing I had to do was give him a call and say, hey, I'm 5.5 months pregnant. Now I really have to finish school. I have a child to take care of.
From a small rural town in Mississippi to a college classroom where everything changed in an instant, today's story is one of resilience in its rawest forms. She was just 18, a freshman in college, when a doctor told her something she never expected. She wasn't just pregnant, she was already 5.5 months along. A couple of months later, her water broke while in class, and weeks after welcoming her son, her father passed away. Before she even could take 6 weeks to recover, she was back on campus determined to finish what she had started. But the journey didn't get any easier. A few years later, while still pursuing her degree, she faced a second unplanned pregnancy. Through grief, judgment, exhaustion, and the weight of raising children while earning a diploma, she kept going. This is a story about navigating life's most unexpected turns and choosing again and again to move forward anyway. To stay in the know about our guests and to get sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, be sure to follow Unplanned and Untold on Facebook and Instagram. You can find that link and a way to support this completely donor-funded podcast by clicking the links in this episode's show notes. Now, let's dive right on into this next thrilling episode by welcoming Santee to Unplanned and Untold. Well, welcome to Unplanned and Untold. Santee, thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am so excited. You have such a unique story, a story unlike any other ones told on this podcast. You are a first. So many different ups and downs and surprises along the way. So I want to go ahead and dive in, talk to our listeners a little bit about how you were raised. Give them some background information on you.
Absolutely. So I love to tell people I'm a country girl at heart. I absolutely enjoyed the outdoors growing up. So 2-parent household. Both of my parents were heavily involved in the community. My mom was really involved in the church. And so I kind of grew up serving alongside with her. And so that was something that I would have to say, really had no choice, but we learned a lot. And just growing up in a small town where everybody knew each other, literally less than 2,000 people. And I graduated with 46 people in my high school class. So very small knit community. And where we lived in the country, most of everyone in that neighborhood were either family or friends. And so that was more so of a close-knit community of us. And we also went to church together. And so that is how I was raised. The common things in the South, Southern foods that was cooked, going to grandparents' house, being able to walk down the road to aunts and uncle houses, family reunions, just community is really how things were built around us. And so that is what it was like. But growing up in a small town, also, there's nothing to do. So there's not a lot of access. And so we traveled probably about 30-40 minutes to go to the mall, to go to Walmart, McDonald's, just to go out to like eat at restaurants. So we had more so mom and pop restaurants, and my mom and my dad had a barbecue pit, is what they called it. So I got a chance to dive in deep with them, learn all the things in regards to cooking. And so that is kind of how I grew up.
I love it. It's that Southern small town charm, Hallmark movie type feel. Oh
Absolutely.
my goodness. There are just some great values that you're able to instill when you have that type of small town feel. And there's pros and cons. I
Oh
mean,
yes. Oh yes.
I moved from Auburn, Alabama, and that's not I mean, I call it a small town compared to your town, not so small. But then I
Right.
move out here to Arizona and it is massive. I mean, millions of people. It's such a totally different lifestyle. And a part of me really does miss that small Southern town feel. You just can't recreate that type of community and that type of camaraderie.
You cannot. That is very
Oh.
true.
So, talk to me about college. Were you always wanting to go to college? Where did you end up going? Walk our listeners through that decision.
Absolutely. So, college was one of my dreams because my sister didn't have the opportunity to go to college, and my brother decided to go into the military. So, I was the baby of them, 14 and 15 years apart. And I said, okay, I want to go to college. But one of the things that I decided not to do was follow the rest of my classmates and friends to the surrounding junior colleges. So I told my mom I want to get away from home. And so I got it accepted to Hampton University. And she said that is too far. You're not going out of state. But
Not
okay,
that far.
not that far. And so after that, she said, you don't have to be close to home, but you have to stay in state. And I was like, oh, okay. And so in my mind, I wanted to be a nurse. And I decided to not choose between Ole Miss and Mississippi State because they were both too close to home. And our little small town was already divided with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So I chose the University of Southern Mississippi. And again, I was interested in nursing, but nursing was not for me. So I found that out within my first 2 years before stepping foot into the nursing program. But I will say that college was a dream of mine because I wanted that experience, but I also wanted it away from home. And so I chose to try out for color guard. I made color guard, and so that allowed me to really stay in Hattiesburg and travel with the band and not see myself coming home every weekend. And so that was kind of my journey to college. And I would have to say, I definitely have to give reference to Upward Bound. So that was a program that really introduced me to college trips, literally visiting campuses, going on campus tours, and also scholarships, and just being able to navigate the beginning stages of college. So Upward Bound is like the bonus to my experience of introductions to college. So yes.
That's amazing. So your freshman year, y'all had a natural disaster hit. Talk to our listeners about how that happened.
So I was already at Southern Miss probably for a good 3 weeks or so because we went down a little bit early for band camp. So my mom, they moved me in probably towards the end of July, beginning of August, and we practiced. And so we practiced, and the next thing we know, we heard about Hurricane Katrina. And in our minds, and some of our minds, we're like, we'll be fine, we'll be good. I think that Wednesday I had just went grocery shopping, and my roommate was from Oxford. And she said, Santee, I think I'm going to go home. And I said, okay, well, be careful. I said, I don't think I'm going home. And my parents were like, I think you'll be fine. Stay put. Well, little did we know, it went from a category 2 or 3 to a category 5. And when it hit the category 5, they would not allow us to leave campus at a certain time. And so they literally shared with our RAs and just resident hall association, like, hey, please don't allow anyone to, begin traveling just because it's, the category has changed. Hurricane Katrina hit, and we were there for about 2 weeks. No power. We had all this food that went to waste. I don't know what made me buy 2 cases of water, but I did. And we really experienced Hurricane Katrina on the first floor of the residence hall. We weren't able to go back up to our rooms. Some residence halls and buildings were damaged, and there was a Mustang parked by my little Ford Escape that a tree fell on, and nothing touched my truck.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, all right, just, I was like, I'm very grateful. I am very thankful. And so we were able to actually, like, once they started cleaning up and everything, we finally were able to reach our parents. And I actually had the opportunity to meet new people within the residence hall. And one of the young ladies, she was from Santee, Mississippi, which is North Mississippi, and her parents were coming to get her. And she said, well, do you want to ride with me? I can ask my parents. I was like, that would be great. So her parents were very generous and gracious to let me tag along, and we met my parents in Grenada, and I was at home. And literally we were at home until after Labor Day. I cannot remember, but it was mid-September or close towards the end when we were actually able to come back to campus and start class. So
that's a wild experience straight out of the gate in college freshman year to have to navigate. And for our listeners, it doesn't stop there. That's not where the shock factor doesn't stop at Hurricane Katrina freshman year. But Santee, when you finally make it home to your mother, her motherly instincts start kicking in, and she starts to feel like there's something up with you. Walk us through how that unfolded and what she was picking up on.
Oh my goodness, yes. So she noticed changes within my face, my nose, even my body, and I didn't. And I was a cheerleader in high school. I was involved in various organizations. I was a diamond girl, so I'm like, I'm still petite. There's nothing wrong. But she noticed that. And for some odd reason, I don't know why, but I had on a larger sweatshirt. Don't know why. It was just larger. I didn't have on a medium. I think I had on a large, but I was just like, it's my Southern Miss sweatshirt. But she noticed everything about me, like the way that I was eating while I was at home. And then she was like, your face is a little bit rounder. And I was like, oh, it's nothing. I was like, oh, I'm fine. And I couldn't say that I've gotten a freshman 15 because I hadn't been there.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks. I hadn't been there long. And so that was very interesting that she was able to notice those things about me. And I was like, oh, it's nothing. It's fine. And we didn't have any more conversation about it. Literally went on back to school. But she noticed those things when I came home from Hurricane Katrina. Yeah.
That's wild. That motherly intuition picks up on certain things.
Yes.
Now, one of the very unique parts of your story is you experienced 2 unplanned pregnancies in college. I want to get into the first one. You're freshman, you're 18.
Yes.
Hurricane Katrina has disrupted things. Now you're back on campus. How do you find out you're pregnant with this first baby?
Okay, so you will probably not believe this, but here we go. So we are preparing for a football game. And so we are at band practice, and for some reason, I'm like, it's a sharp pain. I'm like, okay, I'm not feeling myself. I'm not feeling well. I was getting lightheaded. And so our color guard instructor was like, just take a seat, grab you some water. And so I did all of that, but I kept, having sharp pains. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor. And it was after it was getting close to after hours, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna go to the emergency room and just see what I can find out, because we were still having practice and it was after 5 at that time. Well, I go to the emergency room, I share with them what's going on. They connect me, I fill out the paperwork, connect with the doctor, and the first question is, are you pregnant? Do you think you may be pregnant? I said, oh my goodness, no. No.
Hard no on that
Hard
one.
no. Hard no. And so they say, okay, well, it's just common, we're gonna make sure, they was like, we're gonna allow you to go to the restroom. We need you to, piss in a cup. So, okay, fine. I was like, but I'm not pregnant. It was like, it's fine. I was
Okay,
like, okay.
we're just gonna check.
So they check. I'm sitting there, and one of the nurses come to me and she said, can we speak with you? I was like, oh yeah, sure. And so she takes me in there and she said, I know that you had shared that you didn't think you were pregnant. I said, well, I know that I'm not. She said, well, she was like, that pregnancy test came back positive. And I said, are you sure about that? She said, yes, ma'am. And she said, now we need you to go to the 3rd floor, because she said, we really need to get an ultrasound. She said, we just want to make sure, everything is okay. And I was like, is that for me? She was like, yes, ma'am. And so at that moment, I find out, and again, I was skinny as ever. Didn't look like I was 5.5 months almost.
You were 5.5 months pregnant.
5.5 months pregnant. And one of the reasons why I did not think I was pregnant is because I had a full cycle each month.
Wow.
So I did not have a moment of irregulation or anything. It was a full cycle each month. And I was like, that cannot be correct. She said, well, I need you to go to the 3rd floor. She was like, we need to get an ultrasound. She was like, because we need to know, how far along you are, just making sure that you're healthy, you're well. And I'm like, girl, I got to tell my mama.
Right.
In order to tell my daddy.
Yeah.
This is not what I expect. So yeah.
Did they do the ultrasound with you right then and there in that hospital?
Yes, they did.
And did they show you the screen? Were you able to see?
I was.
Oh my, so you saw a full-fledged, 5.5 months is a full-fledged,
that's
you must have
full-fledged.
hid that baby so, where was it?
I have no idea. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, this is not what I expected. And plus, It was mid-fall semester.
Right.
And so by the time I had shared it with my mom and by the time I had made it home, it was around Thanksgiving time.
How does your mom react? We have heard the gambit of reactions on this podcast, and I'm always curious to know. But your mom, you're 5.5 months pregnant, so that changes a lot of things. Most of the time, we find out 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, but you're 5.5 months. So, what does this conversation look like? How do your parents react?
So, me and my dad had a conversation, and one of my promises to him was to not get pregnant. He was like, you're on this journey, you're about to go to college, you're going to make us proud. And he was like, you're really going to be the first in the family. So I identified as a first gen. That was the conversation we had, but I told my mom first because I know it was going to disappoint my dad. And when I shared it with my mom, that was one of the difficult things. But in return, she said, I already knew. And the fact that she knew and paid attention, again, that discernment, she has that mother's intuition. She just noticed things about me. And I have to be honest, it wasn't until I found out that I actually started blowing up.
Wow.
And so it seems like as soon as I found out, it was like, I have a baby bump. And I'm walking around campus with a baby bump. And so that was one of the things that really, I don't know, it was a turning point for me because I'm like, I'm about to be a mom. And full transparency, my mom was like, what are your thoughts at this time? She was like, are you keeping or are you considering? And I was like, I don't know. She said, well, I know you can't be a mother at 18, so you're going to need some help. And so we had that hard conversation at that time. And it was something I had to like dig deep about and like, is this something I want to do? Is this me having a conversation about an abortion and, you know, thinking about all those things? But again, I was too far as well.
Right. Oh my
So
goodness.
that was something. And just, I think having to tell my dad when that was one of the things that I did not want to disappoint him. And it was very difficult, but yes, that was my turn 18 in July, and here I am about to be a mom.
Wild,
Yeah.
absolutely wild. And to have to digest all of it in super speed because you are so far along, it's not like you have time to unbox all of this and figure it out. So you're home for the holidays for break. You're due, I mean, in a few short months. What does this conversation look like surrounding finishing college?
So, having that conversation with both of my parents, they had decided that I was not quitting or taking a break. Now that I reflect on that today, like in this moment, even now, I wish I would have taken a break because I kept going. But having that conversation, they both agreed that they would take care of Xavier and literally said, hey, we need you to finish college. And it was interesting because I had never seen that done before. I was like, y'all are gonna take care of my child while I go to school? They was like, oh, you have responsibility. There are expectations of you. And so they both agreed upon that. And at the moment, I really didn't know how to respond because I'm like, well, I'm headed back to college. I'll be good. But in that moment, I'm like, both of my parents sacrificed their time, their energy, and they are literally in their, you know, in their 40s, their 50s, like they're living life. And so with them making that decision to take care of him until I finish was a blessing.
That's amazing. But there was also a sacrifice on your part too. I mean, even being 18 and being so young, that's still your baby. That's still a piece of you that's not with you and a part of your brain that is somewhere else as you're still trying to live a college life, get these classes in. Are you still in color guard at this point as well?
I am. So I stuck with
Okay.
color guard until the end of my junior year. I was still involved, and I gave birth though at 7.5 months.
Whoa. Okay. So that's shortly after finding out that you're pregnant, you go back to school. And then how does that all pan out? Why so early?
So I go back to school. It is the first day of classes, and I get to maybe my second class that day, and I literally feel water, and I'm like, am I using the bathroom on
Right.
myself? Wait a minute. And so, you know, in college, they have like the twisting chair. So I go like
Yes.
this. And I said, okay. So, full transparency, I sit up, I open my legs. I said, okay, Santee, what's going on?
Yeah. What's
And
happening?
I said, I think my water has broke. And so the professor, he's going through the syllabus and all of that. And I raised my hand and he said, "Yes, ma'am. You got a question?" I said, "I don't." I said, "But I do have something to share." I said, "I think my water has broke." And he was like, "Hold it. Wait a minute. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get the ambulance." I said, "No, I think I can make it." He was like, "You're not going to make it across campus to your dorm." So at that moment, I am walking out of class and I'm like, "Yeah, I think my water has broke." So I text friends and I'm like, "Hey, y'all, my water has broken. I have got to get to the hospital." So get to the hospital and everything. And literally, I no longer have an amniotic sac or anything. He's just in there. We later learned that his lungs weren't fully developed because we were right there at 7.5. And on top of that, he was just in there. So there was nothing holding him at all. And so we were in the hospital right at 2 weeks because we started classes after MLK Day, and I did not have him until February. Like, I didn't give birth until February the 2nd. So I really had to get the nutrients in order for his lungs to be fully developed and everything. And they were like, "This is going to be, this is going to hurt. You no longer have a water sac for him. He's just in there." And they was like, we cannot risk. And so, they were like, if we risk, we could lose you or lose him. And I was like, okay. And so my mom drove down to Hattiesburg. She was there with me. And they decided that they were going to induce me. And I went into labor on my own. They didn't have to. And they were like, "Oh, he's ready." I was like, "He is." And so that was interesting because I also thought I could choose how I give birth. Right. And I said I wanted a C-section. It was like, "Well, you're healthy enough to actually have a natural birth." And I said, "Who told you that?" They was like, "You're healthy enough.
You're young. You're young and fresh."
Literally. And so literally went into labor at 11:30 on February the 2nd. And his dad was there and everything. And I think he threw up in the corner, maybe fainted. I cannot remember, but I was literally holding my mom's hand. And so that was an experience, being 18. And
all of it. All of it so far is just mind blowing. I mean, I remember being pregnant in class and praying every day, "Lord, please do not have my water break in this lecture hall. Please." There's one door and you're like having to go past everybody. I cannot believe, all of these different things that have happened to you is actually quite mind blowing. Yeah. And speaking of the father of your child, you didn't think you were pregnant. You were 5.5 months along. So that means y'all were not sexually active for quite some time, but it wasn't like this was a continuing thing that was happening. You were, separated somewhat from him. What does the relationship with him look like at the time? Were y'all at the same school? Was he in school? What did this look like? So
we were at different schools.
Okay.
And we had made the decision to no longer be together.
Wow. And then you find out you're 5.5 months pregnant. So that's got to shock him out of his boots.
It's a shocker for him and his family. So, it was the hardest thing I had to do was give him a call and say, "Hey, I'm 5.5 months pregnant."
Oh my gosh.
And at that time, I'm not counting up like June, July, August, September, October. Like, I'm not counting up. And I don't know if he was, but I'm like, I'm 5.5 months pregnant. And so, like, really having to, have that hard conversation. His parents, and they were like, there was a comment made, "How do we know it's yours? She's been to school." And so that comment, was heavy. But at the end of the day, I was like, I didn't understand. I didn't
Yeah.
say I understood, but that was the hardest thing. And in that moment, even at that time, like as I was kind of going through, and also as I gave birth and everything like that, it was one of those things, you know, we kind of asked ourselves was, can we work it out? Do we
Right.
want to be together? And we tried, but it did not work. And so being young, you really don't know what co-parenting is. I never went to a parenting class. Nobody sat me down about all of that, learn about sleep patterns, all these things. And so that was something that I had to do, even though my parents had decided they were going to take care of Xavier. It was things I needed to do because I didn't know how to co-parent. And I didn't know how to navigate what does that look like for us. And so that was something I had to learn, which was not easy.
No.
It was, you know, frustration, and there were expectations and just various things like that. So it was something I had to learn over time.
I bet. Now, going back to school, back on campus without your baby and your parents helping take care of your son, that has to be such an emotional time and such a tug on your heart. What did that look like emotionally for you, being a student and knowing you had your son back at home and your mom was helping raise him?
So there were questions like, what are you doing here? Where's your baby? Are you gonna finish school? And so it was like those kind of questions from like people that knew me, friends and things like that. And you know, at that time, I think Facebook started during my freshman
Joy.
So it was a lot of like posting your college experience and not really the family piece of it. And so for me, I went back, and even in that moment, he was at the hospital for almost right at 2 weeks because he had yellow jaundice. And so he was there, and it was like we were back and forth. And even in that time frame, he was born on February the 2nd. And I told my family this morning, I said it is timely that I'm doing this podcast because my dad died on February the 20th.
Oh my God.
And so today makes 20 years. Xavier is 20 years old, and it's been like interesting. And I smiled because it was like so many moments of this morning that reminded me of him. And even in that moment, I'm like, oh my goodness. And so like when both of my parents made that decision, of course, my mom wasn't thinking that my dad would no longer be here, but she took on that responsibility, and my sister helped her. Again, she is much older than me, but she helped raise me as well. And so it was literally Xavier in between his granny's house and in between his TT's house. And so my mom made sure she told him, I'm not mama, I'm granny. Mama is at school. And so, you know, coming home for Thanksgiving was imperative, Christmas, and letting him get to see me do things while I was in school. So having him, you know, during those moments. So it was very interesting, you know, just to go back and to get back in the swing of things. And one of the things that I don't mind sharing, my freshman year, I had a 4.0 GPA that first semester of fall. And by me going back and not really, I would say, resting and grieving and things like that, my GPA was below like a 1.0. It was, yeah, it was a lot. And so when I talk to students, I tell them it's okay to take a break if it's needed, just to stay well and rested and things like that. But it was a very interesting semester because I tried to get back into the swing of things, and it was difficult. I was like, what am I doing here? Can I?
Yeah.
And my body needed rest, and I didn't rest. I didn't take the 6 weeks. I didn't.
Oh my God. Stop. You went right back into it.
I went right back.
My word.
So I didn't have, and I, you know, I was like, if I would have known what I know now, I would have taken 2026 And I probably would have took the first 2 years off, just to breathe and, you know, get some time and then go back. And I probably may have not went back to Southern Miss. I may have went back. I may have chose, like, I probably would have chose a junior college to be closer to home.
Sure.
But my parents were focused on like scholarships that I had received.
Yeah.
And I couldn't take those with me. So I know they had, you know, the right thoughts of what
Absolutely.
they wanted to see me do. But in that moment, like my health and well being, just mentally and physically, I wasn't ready. So, like, I think the 2 weeks that we were in between, like checking on Xavier while he was still in Hattiesburg, it was a little rest, but it wasn't rest because we were still on the go. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you coming back to school, you just had a baby, no break from that. Your father passes away.
Yeah.
You're still having to focus on finishing school. What keeps you persevering?
You know, I think experiencing both of those, and I won't say setbacks, but I think it gave me a little bit more endurance. It was like, okay, it's not like I wasn't going to finish school, but I was like, now I really have to finish school. I have a child to take care of. Okay, my father has passed. This is not something that my mom can take on for the rest of her life. And so I knew for me, when I reflected on that disappointment, and I was like, was that the last thing? But it wasn't the last thing. Me and my dad spoke the Sunday, that we spoke that Sunday, and that Monday he passed. The last thing that we said to each other, and he said, "I love you, Ruby Lee," and that's my nickname. And I said, "I love you too." And so those were the last words. And so I reflected on those words, but then I also knew that even in that moment, I still could make him proud. And so that was one of the things that like kept me going. I got more involved, found ways to serve, and got connected to a community that really poured into me, which was a bonus. Because although, you know, Xavier wasn't physically there, they understood like what resources were needed,
Right.
how do you navigate these things. And so I was grateful for that.
I can only imagine. Now, fast forward with us to graduation day. What does this day feel like for you? Because at this point, you've had a second unplanned pregnancy. So you've persevered through two at
Yes.
this point. You have handled the passing of your father. You've handled Hurricane Katrina. You handled finding out you're 5.5 months pregnant when you find out you're pregnant. You have pushed through a lot of adversities to get to graduation day. How did it feel knowing you had accomplished so much?
Can I just say it felt damn good
Yes, you can.
to accomplish that. And I really felt like I was not going to graduate, because there were stumbling blocks because, again, I didn't have the best GPA, and it took me a year to get things back up. And I was like, I can't lose scholarships, but, you know, went from a 4.0 to academic probation. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And really having to navigate that. So it really felt good. And that was the first year. It was the centennial year. And that was the first year, I think, or maybe they had done it in the past, but we had graduation on the football field. So it was a centennial year. It was a celebration. It was a beautiful day. Xavier, my mom, Jordan, she was there. So like, here it is. I've had a kid at 18 and 21, and I'm graduating. And the next steps is, okay, I have no idea, but I have walked across this stage. And so I was extremely grateful for that, because in those moments in between my freshman and my senior year, I really got to see like friends show up for me, and people that I was, involved with in student organizations. So they didn't mind Jordan being with me at the meeting. And so one interesting thing that my mom told me was, she was like, I raised Xavier. I'm not going to raise Jordan.
Okay.
You're going to have to take that responsibility. So that was something, of course, new once again. Even though I was a mom at 18, I had to navigate daycare. I had to navigate, resources and various things like that. So I would have to say that her daycare provider was amazing, because there were 2 nights out of the week that I had night classes. And she said, you're out of class at 9:00 or, 9:15. She said, I'm going to do you a favor. She was like, don't come pick up Jordan. You can pick her up in the morning. Once she wakes up, she said she can stay here. So she was like a 24-hour daycare facility. And it was only a few moms that needed her. And so she had a team. And so I think as I reflect on the adversity, I really didn't stop and smell the roses at that moment. I was like, I just walked across stage. And so like when I got my diploma, I was like, is this real? Like, oh my gosh, I got my degree. Like, wait, is this for real? And it was one of those moments that I took a step back and I said, if I can do this, I can get a master's degree. And so in that moment, I was in the process of applying to master's programs, and I was nervous about those 1.5 or 2 years that I really had to get my GPA back to where it needed to be. And I knew that I wanted to do community-based work, and Delta State University, they had a really great community development program, and I fell in love when I went to go visit. And I was like, I'm not able to get a full assistantship because there's no housing here, and I'm going to have to, drive and things like that. And she was like, actually, you can. She was like, we also have a scholars program. And I was like, are you sure? She was like, yes. And so that was a blessing in it as well. And I had the opportunity to work for 2 years after I graduated with my bachelor's, which I think was the best thing that I could do, because I got more time with my kids. And it wasn't an overwhelming job, and I got to work from home. And so I used those 2 years really to, I said at the time, make money, but it allowed me to spend more time with my kids and both of them be together. And so an interesting thing around Thanksgiving holidays and Christmas holidays, especially during finals and exams, my mom would come and get Jordan. And so Jordan and Xavier were together as I was taking exams. And then once I was done, I would come home, and I'll be at home for the Christmas break, but she would always come get Jordan. And she would be like, I need you to pass your exams, all those. So she had both of them during those holiday times. And if it was an exam, especially during finals week, I had finals.
Your mom is a saint. I need to meet this woman, because this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
She truly believed in you, and she believed that you could do what you set out to do. And gosh darn it, you were going to graduate, and nothing was going to stop you from doing that. And she was going to do what she could to help you get there. It blows my mind, to be completely honest, because I kind of experienced the complete opposite of that. I kind of experienced you did this to yourself. Good luck, figure it out, see you on the flip side. And so hearing your mom's perspective, oh my goodness, what a beautiful person.
Yeah. And when I tell people just a snippet of my story, they was like, are you for real? I was like, yes. And on top of that, in between me working, because I was working throughout the Mississippi Delta, she said, just move on back home. And I was like, are you sure? She was like, yes. And so I was able to utilize those 2 years to build, but also help around the home. And like I said, it
Yes.
allowed Xavier and Jordan to like experience each other together. And so
Yes.
those moments turned into the years where they were able to build together. And then by the time Xavier was 7, Jordan was right at 4, we decided to move. And so that was different because my mom always had somebody in the house. And so she had Xavier even after my dad passed, and then she had Xavier and Jordan. And then with me being there, family across the street, it was, it was different. So with it just being her, that house wasn't as noisy or
Yes.
busy. So
Yes. Wow. So what are your hopes for the future when it comes to conversations surrounding unplanned pregnancies? I mean, this podcast was born out of a nonprofit that helps women who are experiencing unplanned pregnancies have both their education and their baby. And we wanted to take it a step further. We wanted to bring these conversations to the table and to give women a platform to share their narrative and share their story and the resilience. Because a lot of times when you look at women who've experienced unplanned pregnancies, the stigma of shame on them, oh, great, you graduated. I'm glad you did. But they don't get to see all the adversities that have been overcome behind the curtains. And I hope that this podcast allows people's brains to open up and see, man, hurdle after hurdle after hurdle was put in front of you and many of the other guests that I interviewed, and it didn't stop you. You kept going and you reached your goals. So what is your hope for the future when it comes to conversations surrounding unplanned pregnancies?
I think what we're doing right now, I love that it's called Unplanned and Untold. I didn't expect to be sharing this story. Like, I've had casual conversations, but I think for me, my hopes is to pour into young girls. And I don't know if I felt shameful at that moment. I felt more so disappointed in regards to my parents. But I know there was small talk around a little small town.
Sure.
And so I know there were probably conversations like, she's not going to make it. She's going to be at home. She's going to be taking care of those kids. And especially after having 2.
Right.
Yeah.
The odds were stacked even higher against you at that point.
Absolutely. And I think for me, with my story, it just reminds me that you can definitely overcome adversity, but in those moments, sometimes you have to find your village in other places and spaces. And I was grateful for that. Like, I'm grateful that my family was my village, but I also had friends, I had mentors, I had advisors, even my professors. And I think that was very important within that space. And I think also, like, for me, what I hope and what I'm seeing now is I would love to see resources for single parents, especially working at a university, being so close to a community college and another small university. And I know there are young women who need support. And so I would love to see baby steps at some point in Mississippi. And that is my hope. I've thought about starting a single moms club, but I also, kind of thought about what is really needed. And when I saw when I saw baby steps, I was like, that's what we need. And there's research of more and more student parents on college campuses, but they don't have the resources. And so I would love to change that. And I would love to even be a resource to even high school moms, because I know quite a few, and they don't have the same story that I do. And they're navigating some hardships, some adversity, and they may not finish high school, or they may finish and they may not feel like they can go to college. And I hope my story serves as a reminder that they can, and they can keep going. But it also takes a village outside of that. And everybody's village looks different. And so that village may be a support group of moms that are able to navigate that. But that is my hope.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have chills. You are a gem. You are an absolute gem. And I'm honored that I got to talk through your story with you today. You have truly overcome so many obstacles. And I know your story is going to hit the right listener, the right student mom who might be waking up this morning, looking at a positive pregnancy test, not knowing how she's going to do it.
Yes.
These are the stories that we hope to get out there so that they understand they can do this. So
Right.
Santee, thank you so much for sharing your story so transparently with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, and to all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. Unplanned and Untold drops new episodes every other Wednesday. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star review if you love this episode. I'm Caitlin Willing, and this is Unplanned and Untold.